Every winter, medieval villages lost families to the cold because firewood cost more than most peasants earned in a season. Then, one desperate farmer tried something so backwards, so against common sense, that it shouldn't have worked. But when his cottage stayed warm while others froze, everything changed. You know what's funny about medieval peasants? We picture them shivering in drafty huts, barely surviving winter with nothing but rags and hope. Well, prepare to have your mind blown. These supposedly primitive people had figured out something that would make modern contractors weep with envy. They created walls that kept homes toasty warm using nothing more than sticks and mud. And before you roll your eyes thinking, great caveman technology, let me tell you, this stuff worked better than half the insulation jobs I've seen in suburban McMansions. The secret weapon? Daub and wattle construction. Here's how these medieval MacGyvers pulled it off. First, they'd weave thin wooden strips, usually hazel or willow, into tight patterns that looked like oversized basket weaving. But here's where it gets clever. They didn't stop there. Next came the daub, a mixture of clay, mud, straw, and sometimes animal dung. Yes, you heard that right, cow manure in the walls. Your HOA would have a field day with that one, but this gooey cocktail wasn't just slapped on randomly. They'd carefully pack it into every gap and crevice of that woven wood framework. The magic happened in science. Those woven strips created countless tiny air pockets when sealed with the mud mixture. Air, as any heating contractor will tell you after charging you $3,000, is nature's best insulator. The peasants had basically invented medieval thermal panels without knowing a thing about thermal dynamics. What blows my mind is how accessible this was. No trips to Home Depot, no credit card debt for fancy materials. Everything came from within walking distance of their homes. Wood from nearby trees, clay from the ground, straw from their fields. And the results? These daub and wattle walls provided insulation comparable to many modern methods. We're talking about keeping families warm through brutal European winters when the alternative was literally freezing to death. No pressure, right? The proof is in the pudding. Or should I say, in the building still standing today. Shakespeare's birthplace in Stratford-upon-Avon, daub and wattle construction. It's been keeping the weather out for over 400 years. Makes you wonder what other primitive solutions we've forgotten in our rush toward complicated modern fixes, doesn't it? But walls were just the beginning of their genius. Wait until you hear what they did overhead, because their roofing solution was even more brilliant than their walls, and it came straight from nature's playbook. Now here's where medieval peasants got really clever with their roofing game. While wealthy folks were building with expensive stone and tile, these resourceful villagers discovered that nature had already provided the perfect insulator, and it was literally growing in their fields. Thatch roofing wasn't just slapping some straw on top and hoping for the best. Oh no. These weren't your average weekend DIY enthusiasts fumbling around with a hammer. Medieval thatchers were basically the engineers of their time, creating what amounted to nature's own thermal blanket. The secret lay in the layering technique. Straw, reeds, or even wheat stalks were bundled and laid in overlapping rows, each layer trapping pockets of air. Think of it like wearing 7 sweaters at once, except it actually worked and didn't make you look like the Michelin Man's medieval cousin. But here's the kicker. Despite looking like something that would blow away in a stiff breeze, properly laid thatch could withstand decades of brutal weather. We're talking 10 to 15 years of service life, which in medieval terms was practically forever. Your average peasant's boots probably fell apart faster than their roof. The thickness was crucial too. A good thatch roof measured at least 12 inches thick, sometimes reaching 18. That's more insulation than some modern homes have in their walls. The dense layering created an almost impenetrable barrier against wind, rain, and most importantly, heat loss. What really made this system brilliant was its breathability. Unlike modern materials that trap moisture and create mold problems, thatch naturally regulated humidity. The roof could shed water like a duck's back while still allowing air circulation. Medieval peasants accidentally invented breathable insulation centuries before Gore-Tex showed up. And get this, thatching was a community event. Entire villages would come together for roof-raising days, turning necessary maintenance into social gatherings. Imagine your neighbors actually wanting to help fix your roof instead of pretending they're not home when you ask to borrow a ladder. The materials were essentially free too. After harvest, All that leftover straw that modern farmers might burn or compost became premium building material. One man's agricultural waste was another man's five-star roof insulation. Well, thatch roofs were just the beginning of their heating genius. Wait until you discover how these medieval masterminds turned simple stones into all-night heating systems that would make modern space heater manufacturers weep with envy. Now here's where things get interesting and smoky. Medieval peasants built their entire home around one central feature that would make modern fire marshals have a complete meltdown. The open hearth sat right in the middle of the house, not tucked away in a corner, not behind some fancy mantelpiece, smack dab in the center like the world's most dangerous coffee table. This wasn't just where they cooked their turnip stew. This was their heating system, their social media, and their entertainment center, all rolled into one blazing package. But here's the clever part that most people miss. All that smoke everyone complains about, it wasn't just making peasants cough, it was actually heating the entire house as it drifted upward. Think of it as the world's first central heating system, just with a lot more soot and a significantly higher chance of lung problems. The smoke would rise naturally, warming every nook and cranny before finally escaping through the roof. Brilliant, right? Well, sort of. The downside was living in what essentially amounted to a chimney. But hey, nobody said medieval life came with modern conveniences. Managing these fires required serious skill. Too big and you'd waste precious fuel and possibly burn down the neighborhood. Too small and you'd freeze faster than a smartphone battery in January. Peasants became fire whisperers out of pure necessity, reading flames like we read weather apps. What's fascinating is the fuel choices. Wood was great if you could get it, but many peasants turned to something that sounds absolutely dreadful: peat. This stuff is basically decomposed plant matter that burns slower than molasses but keeps going for hours. It's renewable, which makes medieval peasants accidentally more environmentally conscious than most people today. Despite all the smoke and constant fire management, these hearths became the family gathering spot. Kids did homework by firelight, parents told stories, and grandparents shared wisdom, all while slowly getting smoked like medieval bacon. The hearth wasn't just heating their homes, it was the heartbeat of family life. The really smart peasants learned to bank their fires at night, keeping just enough ember glow to restart easily in the morning. No matches, no lighters, just skill and prayer that tomorrow wouldn't start with frozen fingers trying to strike flint in the dark. But even the cleverest fire management had its limits on those brutal winter nights. That's when peasants pulled out another trick that would make modern heating engineers scratch their heads in amazement. Now here's where medieval peasants got really clever with their heating game. They discovered something that would make modern engineers jealous: warming stones. These weren't just random rocks from the garden, mind you. Peasants carefully selected dense stones that could soak up heat like a sponge absorbs water. They'd place these stones directly in their hearth fires during the day, letting them get scorching hot while dinner cooked. But here's the brilliant part. Once bedtime rolled around, they'd carefully fish out these heated stones using wooden tongs or thick cloth wrappings. Think of it as the medieval version of a heated car seat, except way more hardcore. The physics behind this trick? Pure genius. Dense stones hold on to heat for hours, releasing it slowly and steadily throughout the night. While you're sleeping soundly, that stone under your bed is working overtime, radiating warmth like a tiny furnace that never needs refueling. My grandfather used to tell stories about his grandmother doing something similar during the Great Depression. She'd heat bricks in the oven and wrap them in towels for cold winter nights. Guess what? Same concept these peasants figured out 600 years earlier. Makes you wonder who's really the smarter generation, right? The beauty of this system was its efficiency. No wasted fuel, no overnight fire tending, no risk of burning down the house while everyone slept. Just pure, reliable, radiant heat that cost absolutely nothing extra. Different regions had their favorite stone types. River rocks were popular because water had already tested them. If they survived countless freeze-thaw cycles in nature, they wouldn't crack when heated. Sandstone worked well too, though it didn't hold heat quite as long as denser options. Some families got fancy with their stone game. They'd have multiple stones of different sizes, big ones for major heating, smaller ones that fit perfectly at the foot of the bed. The whole family could stay warm without burning through their precious wood supply all night long. Well, the really smart peasants didn't stop there. They realized that individual stones were just the beginning of smart heat management. but what happens when you combine this stone heating trick with some seriously clever house design. That's when medieval heating went from good to absolutely ingenious, and the results might surprise you more than you'd expect. Now here's where medieval peasants really showed their genius. They understood something most modern homeowners completely ignore. Location, 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 but not in the way your real estate agent means. These folks positioned their houses like chess masters planning 5 moves ahead. Every door, every window, every wall had a purpose that would make today's architects weep with envy. South-facing homes weren't just prettier, they were survival tools. Winter sun hits hardest from the south, and peasants grabbed every precious ray like their lives depended on it. Because honestly, they did. Think your grandpa complaining about the thermostat is bad? Try explaining to a medieval family why you built your house facing north. You'd be sleeping in the barn faster than you could say, architectural mistake. But wait, there's more to this solar strategy. Those thick stone walls everyone assumes were just for defense? Wrong. They were medieval batteries, soaking up daytime heat and releasing it slowly through the night. Like having a space heater that runs on sunshine and costs absolutely nothing. The windows tell an even cleverer story. Small openings meant less heat escaped, but peasants positioned them precisely where morning light would flood in. Every square inch of warmth was calculated, measured, hoarded like gold. Natural windbreaks became their secret weapons too. Well-placed oak tree could slash heating needs by 30%. Modern energy consultants charge thousands to tell you what any peasant grandmother knew by heart. Then there's the genius of clustering. Villages weren't randomly scattered, houses huddled together like penguins in a blizzard. Shared walls meant shared warmth. Your neighbor's fire literally helped heat your home. Makes sense, right? Even the door placement was strategic. Main entrances faced away from prevailing winds, often with small vestibules creating airlocks. 2-door systems that would make NASA jealous, all designed by people who never heard of thermodynamics but understood cold better than anyone. The weird part is how they read microclimates without weather apps or thermometers. A slight dip in the land meant protection from wind. A southern slope meant extra sun exposure. They treated their environment like a detailed instruction manual. Hills, trees, streams, everything became part of their heating system. Free natural resources doing the heavy lifting while they focused on survival. Medieval peasants essentially turned their entire landscape into one massive coordinated heating network. Pretty impressive for people we often dismiss as primitive. But even the smartest house design meant nothing if you froze to death in your sleep. Now here's where medieval peasants got really clever. They basically turned themselves into walking furnaces. And no, I'm not talking about their legendary hygiene habits. Wool was their secret weapon, not the scratchy sweater your aunt knitted that you pretend to love. Medieval wool was thick, dense, and tougher than a $2 steak. The key? Layering like your life depended on it, because it literally did. They'd start with a linen undergarment. Yes, they did wear underwear, thank goodness. Then came the wool tunic, followed by another wool layer, topped with an outer garment that could double as a tent if needed. Smart, right? But here's the brilliant part. Each layer trapped air between the fabrics, creating insulation pockets that work better than some modern sleeping bags. It's like wearing a portable heating system that never needs batteries. The really genius move? These clothes weren't just for daytime. When night fell and temperatures dropped faster than your enthusiasm for Monday mornings, peasants would sleep in their clothes. The garments that kept them warm during the day became their pajamas, blankets, and sometimes even pillows. Women wore long woolen dresses with multiple underskirts. Think of it as the medieval equivalent of a wearable igloo. Men had thick woolen hose that covered their legs completely. No frozen ankles for these folks. Then there's the footwear situation. Leather boots stuffed with straw or wool scraps. Crude? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. Your expensive winter boots might look better, but these medieval contraptions kept feet warm in conditions that would make a polar bear complain. The wealthy might have had furs, but peasants made do with what they had, and what they had worked incredibly well. Sheep provided wool year after year. It was renewable, washable, and practically indestructible. Here's something that'll surprise you. Medieval peasants often owned only 2 or 3 outfits total, but those outfits were built to last decades. They'd patch, mend, and repair the same garment season after season. Waste not, want not, freeze not. The clothing doubled as sleeping gear, workwear, and formal attire all rolled into one. Talk about getting your money's worth. And when garments finally wore out completely, nothing went to waste. Old clothes became rags, stuffing material, or even fire tinder. Every thread had value. This clothing strategy was so effective that some outdoor enthusiasts today still swear by the medieval layering method, but clothing was just one piece of their survival puzzle. The real magic happened when they combined smart dressing with an even smarter living arrangement. Ever wonder why medieval peasants didn't freeze to death when their heating systems were basically glorified campfires? Well, here's the secret nobody talks about. They were masters of human heat sharing. Medieval families weren't small by choice. Having 8 or 9 people crammed into a one-room cottage wasn't poverty. It was genius. Think about it. Each person generates roughly the same heat as a 75-watt light bulb. Now multiply that by a whole family, and you've got yourself a walking, talking heating system that never needs fuel. But here's where it gets interesting. Peasants didn't just pile everyone together randomly like sardines in a can. They had strategies that would make modern heating engineers jealous. The youngest children slept in the middle, surrounded by adults. Grandparents, who felt the cold most, got prime spots near the hearth, but still close to the family cluster. During the harshest winter months, entire extended families would move into communal halls. These weren't fancy gathering spaces. They were survival chambers. Imagine 20 to 30 people sharing one large room, their combined body heat raising the temperature by 10 to 15 degrees. That's like getting free central heating just by having relatives visit for the holidays. The brilliant part? They understood something we've forgotten in our age of individual thermostats. Shared warmth isn't just about temperature, it's about survival efficiency. One fire heating 30 people beats 30 people each trying to heat themselves. Makes sense, right? Medieval communities took this concept even further. Neighbors would take turns hosting warming parties during blizzards. Everyone brought food, stories, and most importantly, their body heat. These gatherings could last for days, turning what could have been deadly cold snaps into community bonding experiences. But wait, there's something almost magical about how they managed sleeping arrangements. Families developed intricate systems of who slept were based on who generated the most heat. Young men, being natural furnaces, were strategically placed to maximize warmth distribution. Pregnant women got premium heating spots. Even the family dog had a designated warming duty. The communal approach worked so well that many medieval villages reported fewer cold-related deaths than some modern homeless populations. They'd mastered the art of collective survival while we've become experts at expensive individual comfort. And the weird part is, this wasn't just about staying warm. The social bonds formed during these long winter months of close quarters living created communities so tight-knit they could survive famines, wars, and plagues together. Now, all this body heat management was clever, but peasants had one more internal warming trick that modern science is only beginning to understand. Well, here's where things get interesting. Medieval peasants discovered something we've somehow forgotten today. They heated themselves from the inside out. Picture this. You're shivering in your drafty medieval home, and your neighbor suggests drinking hot broth. Sounds obvious, right? But these folks turned internal warming into an art form that would make your grandmother's chicken soup jealous. Medieval peasants made thick, hearty stews that packed more warming power than a space heater. We're talking about meals so dense with nutrients and calories that your body became its own furnace. Root vegetables, grains, whatever meat they could get their hands on, all simmered together in one pot over that central hearth. And the weird part is, they understood metabolism better than most people today. When you eat warm, calorie-dense food, your body works harder to digest it. That process generates heat. It's like having a tiny coal-burning power plant in your stomach. But wait, there's more to this medieval heating hack. They didn't just drink water when thirsty. Oh no. These crafty peasants sipped on honey mead and warm herbal broths throughout the day. Think of it as the medieval version of carrying around a thermos, except the thermos was inside you. Makes sense, right? Your core body temperature rises when you consume warm liquids. But here's what's brilliant. They timed it perfectly. Hot drinks before bed meant staying warm longer through those brutal winter nights. Let's not forget about their preservation game. While we're throwing away leftovers after 3 days, medieval peasants were fermenting foods all summer long. Why? because fermented foods actually help your body generate more internal heat. Sauerkraut, pickled vegetables, fermented grains. These weren't just survival foods, they were heating fuel. The really clever trick was making sure someone always had something warm to cook. That central hearth never went cold, which meant there was always hot food available. No waiting 20 minutes for the microwave to heat your sad frozen dinner. And here's something that'll surprise you. They ate more fat during winter months on purpose. Not because they were indulgent, but because fat burns slower and longer in your body, like putting logs instead of kindling on a fire. This whole internal heating system works so well that many peasants could work outside in conditions that would send us running for our heated cars. Their bodies were literally furnaces, powered by smart food choices and warm drinks. Talk about efficiency. They solved heating, nutrition, and food preservation all in one steaming bowl.